Cheap or expensive cologne? Which one should you get? Well, with today's video I'm going to try to help you out with that. Hey guys, I'm George, the nice smelly gentleman, and it's time for your dose of some fragrance content. Today's video is going to be about discussing about what are the differences between cheap clones and expensive clones. Now, a few years ago, when we didn't have so many Middle Eastern clones, we didn't have such a such an amount of options, and most clones used to be quite cheap, and they used to be pretty much at the same price level or at the same price bracket. But nowadays the Middle Eastern brands are becoming more and more popular, and that means that we're seeing more and more fragrances, more and more clones of the same original scent but priced at a few different price levels. If I can sort of summarize or categorize them, you get some clones, usually you get the lowest price clones that go for somewhere between 20-25 euros, $20-25. Then we have this sort of a mid of the pack type of scents that are priced somewhere between $30 to $40, $40-45 even. And then nowadays we have this top tier clones that most brands offer. For example, the French Avenue ones, or stuff like the Lattafa Pride line or Niche Emirati from Lattafa. Things like Maison Alhambra The Oud line, those ones are priced above $50. So we're talking about $50, $60, $70, $50, 60 euros. And so for today's video I've picked up two clones from the two different price brackets. We get one a very cheap one and one a more expensive one, just to try to quickly tell you what are the differences and which one should you go with. And I'm going to start with a scent profile that's very popular at the moment. That's mango tropical based fragrances, and to be more exact, talking about God of Fire clones. God of Fire is very popular at the moment, and all Middle Eastern brands have their own versions. And for today's video I've included these two. One of them comes from Lattafa and it's called Opulent Dubai, and the other one comes from Arabiyat Prestige and it's called Kohl Opulence. Basically they smell very similar to each other, but Lattafa's Opulent Dubai costs somewhere between $20 to $25, whereas Kohl Opulence, Kohl Luminous, excuse me, is the correct name of the fragrance. Kohl Luminous goes for around about $50 to $60, so it's around about twice the price. But what do you get in return for paying twice the amount of money? Well, for starters, there's a very big difference when it comes to the packaging and the whole experience of actually receiving and opening up the the fragrance itself, the box, the bottle, and all that stuff. Kohl Luminous comes very nicely packaged. The attention to detail is very nice. The whole bottle looks like a piece of art. You get a pressurized sprayer. Everything feels a lot more luxurious and a lot higher quality compared to the simple packaging of Opulent Dubai. In a way, the same can be said about the scent. Now, both of them, in fact, even Opulent Dubai being so cheap, still smells quite nice, and the quality is surprisingly good at that price point. But definitely, Kohl Luminous offers higher quality of the scent, higher quality ingredients, better performance, better projection, and all that stuff. So at the end of the day, you're paying twice the amount of money, but you're getting a lot better experience of actually receiving and owning the whole fragrance. You're getting a lot higher sort of detail to attention to detail, and you're getting better performance and better quality of the scent. In my opinion, if you are after just the highest possible quality, go with Kohl Luminous. If you just simply want to experience the God of Fire scent profile for the least amount of money, then go with Opulent Dubai from Lattafa. The next original scent profile that I'm going to show you two alternatives. Again, one of them priced at one of the lowest possible price levels, the other one quite a bit more expensive, is the original scent of Louis Vuitton Sombre Nomade, which is very popular. It's a great scent that I really like a lot, but even though it's a designer fragrance, it's very expensive. around the world. So you know, there are very cheap options and there are some more expensive options. Now the cheapest possible option that I know of comes from the brand of Zimaya, and it's called Ilham Al Oud, and one of the best options and higher priced options comes from the brand of the Oud's collection, and it's called Royal Knight. And again, this one costs around about $20, maybe even less. This one costs upwards of 40, 50. In fact, in some places around here this used to cost over $60 at a point in time. Now it's a little bit cheaper. But what's the difference? Well, again, just like with the first pair, you know, the Oud's collection Royal Knight comes a lot more luxuriously packaged. You get a magnetic cap, you get a nice sprayer, and overall the whole experience of you know, owning the fragrance is a lot better. Again, the attention to detail is higher and all that stuff. And then the same can be said about the scent. Now in this case it's even more sort of the difference is even more telling, because Ilham Al Oud just feels like a more simplified, stripped down, more simplified version of Ombre Nomad, whereas you know, Royal Knight smells a lot closer to Ombre Nomad, and it also has higher quality as ingredients and all that stuff. So at the end of the day, again, I would say that it really depends on what you're looking for, but in this case specifically, I would say that Ombre Nomad is such an interesting scent, high quality scent, that you need to invest in a more expensive clone in order to really experience something similar to owning the original fragrance. And I would say that it's really not worth it going with something super cheap like Ilham Al Oud from Zimaya. The next original scent that I'm going to cover in this video is called YSL Tuxedo, and it used to be quite popular with Middle Eastern brands. Like a year or a couple of years ago, we saw a lot of clones of Tuxedo. And one of the very first to actually really make a splash came from the brand of Maison Alhambra, and it was called the Tux. Nowadays I think this has a different name. I'm not exactly sure what the name is. I might put it somewhere on the screen after I edit the video. But this used to be very popular, very hard to find, and initially when this was released, this used to be quite cheap. But then it got, you know, the demand was so high that it was hard to find, so prices started to reach absurd levels for the quality that it offers. And nowadays I think the prices again have settled a little bit and this is easier to find. But I think the original price point of this one used to be around about $25. Then we have another clone, which in my opinion is the highest quality Middle Eastern clone of a Tuxedo, that comes from the brand of French Avenue, and it's called Ighwa. This one to this day costs around about 60 euros, so probably around about 60 to $70. So again, we're talking about at least double the price, a double of a price difference with those two. And I'm going to try to answer the question whether it's worth it. Again, the differences here are night and day when it comes to the packaging, the presentation and everything else. Ighwa is very luxuriously packaged. The whole, you know, opening up and receiving and owning the fragrance is quite the experience. The Tux is a lot more simplistic when it comes to the packaging and the scent profile. This also is slightly has a slightly smaller bottle. I think this is a 90 milliliter bottle, whereas this is 100 milliliters. So you're getting a little bit more fragrance for your money with the one from French Avenue. The same can be said about the scent profile. The Tux smells very nice at the price point that it was originally selling for. The quality is definitely lower than compared to Ighwa, but really depends on what you're looking for. In this case, it's a little bit tougher for me to recommend Ighwa, because although it's the best possible Middle Eastern clone of Tuxedo, still I don't think, especially when it comes to the scent and the performance, the differences are so huge that the double the price can be justified. In this case, I would really advise you to go with which one you feel more comfortable paying for. If you're okay with paying something like 50, 60 euros, $60 and whatnot, definitely Ighwa is the better option overall when you consider everything and you're going after the highest quality. But if you're not okay with paying so much money, then the Tux or something like the Tux can actually work good for you, and I think it's worth also checking out. And the last original fragrance that I'm going to cover in this video comes from the brand of Dior, and it's called Dior Sauvage. Now in this case I have clones of Dior Sauvage. On one hand Dior Sauvage EDT, and then on the other hand Dior Sauvage EDP. So they're not exactly the same fragrances, but at the end of the day the differences between the original scents are quite minor anyways, so I think it's still a fair comparison. The two clones again come from the brands of Maison Alhambra, which is called Salvo Intense, and from French Avenue, which is called Zenith Blue. And again, we're talking about at least double the price difference. This one used to cost around about 20 euros. This costs around about 40 euros right now, maybe slightly lower than 40 euros, but we're talking almost double the price when it comes to the difference. And again, just like with the previous three couples or pairs, in here with the more expensive fragrance, you'll get a lot better experience, a lot more enjoyable experience when you're receiving and opening up the bottle, because the presentation and everything else just feels overall of a lot higher quality. Again, the attention to detail and everything else. The same can be said about the scent profile. The quality here is definitely higher with the one from French Avenue. But at the end of the day, Salvo Intense is actually a pretty nice, pretty decent little fragrance that still smells quite similar to the original one and offers pretty good performance as well. And again, my advice will be the same as with the previous pair. If you're okay with paying a bit of a premium, but at the same time getting higher quality, higher, better overall experience of owning the fragrance, then definitely French Avenue's Zenith Blue is the better option. I personally would go with that, but even if you go with Salvo Intense, I think it's still okay, because this offers quite a big bang for your buck at the end of the day. Again, the better quality, no doubt, belongs to Zenith Blue, but Salvo Intense is also worth checking out. And so guys, in today's video I tried to answer the question, is it worth spending more and chasing a higher quality clone, or you can safely go with something that's a lot cheaper? And I tried to answer that question with giving you a few examples as well. I hope that you found today's video useful. If you did, give it a like, and I also hope that you're going to join me in my next video for your dose of some fragrance content. And until then, stay safe and bye bye.